Mover's Odyssey, Skinny Strong, how it happens and a technique for achieving it.
Ever tried this technique? Let us know what kind of results you had and if you have any other tips that you can provide the community in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified of future content. Good luck with your training, and until next time, keep moving, my friends. Strength and power are often associated with size, yet throughout history, athletes who are small in stature have displayed tremendous power and nearly unbelievable strength. A prime example of this is 1980s boxing superstar Ray Boom Boom Mancini, a man whose power was so legendary that at a height of only 5 feet 4 inches and weighing only 135 pounds, he routinely had to spar heavyweights in order to avoid consistently knocking out his training partners. A more recent example is the incredibly strong schoolteacher and British weightlifting champion Jaswant Shergill, who had a body weight of only 67 kilograms on a rather thin frame, was able to lift an incredibly impressive 155 kilograms overhead in 2023. So how are such extraordinary feats of power and strength possible without a correspondingly large physique? Strength is built primarily by one of two mechanisms. The first is the one everybody immediately thinks about: changing the mechanical strength of the muscle fibers themselves. This type of strength training is seen in most strength training methods and results in increases in the actual size and strength of the muscle fibers that make up the muscles being trained. The second mechanism is much less talked about, but no less important, and it is known as neuromuscular efficiency. Strength and power gains stemming from this mechanism are not due to the strength of the muscle fibers, but are instead created by the highly efficient use of the nervous system that controls those muscle fibers. Effective neuromuscular strength means that your nervous system can recruit high levels of muscle fibers while also ensuring that the fibers selected are the most appropriate and efficient for the movement patterns being used. On top of this, there is a far more effective synchronization of efforts between the primary muscular movers and the supplementary muscles responsible for stabilizing and assisting the body during strength production.
Natty Life, Alexander Zas, a different kind of strength.
Perhaps another thing that made his strength so hard to grasp was his size. You see, he wasn't a typical giant strongman, like, say, Apollon or Louis Cyr. Alexander was lean and muscular, but all things considered, he was pretty short and small, at just 168 centimeters or 5 foot 6, and a body weight of 75 kilos or 165 pounds. It's hard to truly rank his strength since he never really competed in some kind of sanctioned contest, but certainly in terms of circus strongman, he was considered to be among the very best at the time, and many didn't hesitate to call him the strongest man in the world. Alexander took quite a different approach to training compared to the world of physical culture. That's because he considered his muscles to be of secondary importance. Rather, his main priority was always to develop his tendons, as he believed having powerful tendons was the secret to extraordinary strength. He had this to say, quote, "Without tendons, we would turn into jelly. Tendons must be trained. In my experience, a man of large composition is not necessarily strong, just as a man of modest composition is not always weak. I do not believe in big muscles if there is no real strength in the tendons. You can see many physical culture enthusiasts who have very large muscles. However, what is the point in having these muscles if there is no rudimentary strength in the tendons? They cannot fully use the strength of their muscles during the moments that truly test their strength. This is why their strength is a sheer illusion. One gets the best increase in tendon strength when their power is applied to a motionless object. They become stronger from the resistance, not from the movement." So this was the core principle behind Alexander's system of training: to become strong by building powerful tendons with isometric exercises. Some of the feats of strength he performed regularly included breaking chains by expanding his chest, breaking chains with his fingers, hammering large nails into thick planks with the palm of his hand, resisting the pull of 2 horses, suspending a piano and pianist from his teeth while hanging upside down, other heavy lifts with his mouth, carrying a piano pianist, and a dancer on his back all at once, bending a short iron bar into a U shape with his bare hands, bending long and thick iron bars into all sorts of shapes, lying on a bed of nails while a stone was hammered on his chest, supporting the weight of many men on his chest while continuing to breathe, and having a loaded truck drive over him. While some of this might sound like trickery, and there were certainly many skeptics even back then, the fact is that Samson's feats always held up to scrutiny, and he was willing to prove his strength to anyone under any conditions at any time.
The Pioneer, hidden power, how to get strong without getting big.
There's this trope in anime where often the biggest and strongest characters are actually weaker than the small and unusual looking characters. This is something that Toriyama likes to do in particular.
At last, Frieza decides to show himself. And from here, he doesn't look so tough anymore.
And at some point, there'll be a scene where the big hulking creature will throw this massive punch or blast at the little guy, who will just lift a finger and block it without even seeming to move, without even seeming to need to get into a defensive stance. They can just be strong from that angle with seemingly no effort. That's what real, wiry, unassuming power would look like. And perhaps, unusually, the closest thing we have to that in real life is farmer strength. So you might have heard of farmer strength. It's this kind of urban myth that farmers and other manual workers have got a whole lot of extra strength. They're surprisingly powerful despite not necessarily practicing any kind of strength sport. Likewise, you might have heard of dad strength. This is the notion that dads have got this kind of unusual wiry strength. You might remember as a kid your dad grabbing your wrist when you were being naughty and having a seemingly unshakable vice-like grip. Where does that come from? Because they're practicing movements that will help them to build that intermuscular coordination at the same time as strengthening tendons and grip strength. Because they're moving all throughout the day, the farmer or the manual laborer is doing manual work and the dad is lifting his kid on his shoulders and running around and carrying heavy bags. Because you're doing that throughout the day, you're rehearsing that movement and strengthening yourself. But at the same time, you're doing that in standing up positions, in moving, dynamic, changeable positions. So for an example, go and stand by a wall. Stand completely straight so your legs are side by side and your arms are down by your side. Stand about 40 centimeters away from the wall, facing it dead on. Now lift one arm up to about shoulder height and then push against the wall as hard as you can. You'll find that even if you have a 150 kilogram bench press normally, you're probably not able to exert more than about 30 kilograms of force here. And the reason is because you're only as strong as the weakest link. And at the same time, you have to coordinate lots of different muscles all at once from this mechanically disadvantaged position. So what's actually happening is you're stabilizing your shoulder, you're engaging your core, your rectus abdomini to prevent yourself bending backwards, and your obliques to prevent yourself from twisting. You're digging through your glutes to keep your legs straight, and even through your feet will be digging into the ground. And it's your ability to use these muscles together that exerts that force. It's not all just about pecs and tricep like it is in a bench press. This is how you use your body in real life, and this is what we don't really practice. But the farmer or the dad who's constantly on the move is constantly having to practice these unusual positions and strengthen their movement patterns in ways that are more unpredictable like this. Imagine digging a hole for a moment. Each time you dig a hole with a big spade, you're jabbing the spade into the ground with a lot of force. It's a ballistic movement. Then you're leveraging the spade up, which is going to feel heavy because of that mound of dirt on the end. And then you're moving it, twisting your body to one side and dumping it over there. Then you're performing the movement again, and you're doing this again and again throughout the day. I don't know if digging holes is something farmers do, by the way. I'm not a farmer. But as you do this, the hole also gets deeper, so you're changing your position, you're stooping more. Then throughout the rest of the day, you might be carrying bales of hay, pushing tractors, wrestling pigs, or whatever else it is that farmers probably do. Point is, you're practicing strength in all these different positions without necessarily developing size. At the same time, you're also building tendon strength and grip strength, which is something else we talked about. And as a result, you have this wiry, unassuming farmer strength. Of course, you don't have to become a professional farmer to get that kind of strength. There are ways to incorporate this sort of training into your routine. You can do it with cable machines, any kind of exercise where you're standing up, and at the same time with things like animal movements, where you're just moving your body in more dynamic ranges of motion, more unpredictable positions. Training outside makes a huge difference as well.